I'm going to go ahead and record this. Okay, so I'm Linda Bessemer with Muses 3, and I'll let my partner introduce himself.
Good afternoon. I'm Carl Franklin, also with Muses 3, and really looking forward to moving you folks along with any issues you might have at Harmony.
Oh, thank you.
Great.
Do you
So,
want, do you
I'm
care?
sorry.
You don't care who I am, right?
Oh, yes, we do.
Of course we do. Would you please introduce yourself?
Oh, I'm Ellen French. I work for Harmony, and my question was, how would I add myself as a co-teacher to a regular teacher's class? Because I'm an interventionist.
Sure. And that's an excellent question. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to share my screen. And, oh, shoot, my little thing disappeared. Hang on. Oh, here. Let me cancel that and go back and see. Oh, well, that's what happened. It flipped over to a survey screen. So when I went to share my screen, I didn't see my Mayan login. So I was like, well, I'm not sure where that went now. Okay, so hopefully you can see my Mayan screen.
Yes, I can.
Okay, and you may be logging in differently. Carl and I have a demonstration account, so we always have to go to muses3.com to log in.
Okay.
Mayan.com.
Mayan.com, I'm sorry. Thank you. So you may have a single sign-in account through Harmony. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to log in. I had my one teacher account set up using Carrie. So I had it as K Bell.
Okay.
And I'm going to go ahead and log into that account. So we're going to use this as the regular classroom teacher. So this would be your colleague. And so when I log in, of course, this is my teacher dashboard. And when I click on classroom, then I can see my roster and then I can see my group. And these are the students. So your colleague will have the students that are in her roster. And then I've also just duplicated this as a group, just so that I could demonstrate for you. And I've called this group Shared Roster with L. Bessemer. So in your colleague's case, again, a group might be Shared Roster with Ellen French. Now,
so we're gonna create a group. Is that what we have to do?
This is the easiest way to do it. So what she would do is she would go to classroom and then to students. And then I'll go ahead and add a group here just so that you can see what the process is. And we'll make this recording available to you.
Okay.
So what your colleague would do, she would click on classroom, then students. She can add a group. And I'll just call this one Shared Roster with E. French.
Great.
Okay, and then the description is just going to be shared class.
Okay.
Now, there are two ways that you can do this. The first way is you and your colleague work together to do this, and it's very easy. The second way would be if you feel that your students are independent enough. If you click allow students to join this group using a group code and click on, then there's actually going to be a code that you could give students.
Sure.
And the students would simply click, would enter that code and they'd be able to join a group. So you would have to do this on your side.
Gotcha.
Instead of setting up a group that would contain the same roster as your colleague, you can give your class a code to join the group. But what I'm going to show you is how your colleague can actually make a copy of their roster or that way you can ensure that every student that should be a part of the group is, whether you create a group that has all those students that are in the roster yourself and put the students in your group, or whether you ask students to join the group, you still want to verify that you have all the right students that you need.
Sure. Yeah.
So that's really what I'm going to show you. And you can do both. You can set up a group with some students and then have this code available for other students that might come along that you want to join the group.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. After the
So-
fact. Gotcha.
Yep. So here's my group. And right now you can see there are no students in this group because I've just created the group. When you're, when I go to assign students, all I would need to do, and this is your colleague, this isn't you, because
Right.
I'm going to go through this process and then show you on your side what you would need to do. So what your colleague would do is when she clicks assign, it'll say, here's the group that we have, students in shared roster with eFrench.
Just nobody.
Now we can search the building, we can search by grade, or we can search by rosters and groups. She can search by rosters and groups, and she can either put her whole roster in there, or she can put the students that are in another group.
Mhm.
You know, it's whatever is the group of students that you need to be working with.
Sure.
If I put my roster in there, it just pulls up my roster, and I just bring my mouse down and click on the add button, and I want all of those students added to this group.
All right. Can I ask a question?
Oh, absolutely, please do.
Click and apply. Okay. I know we wanted to do this like per class.
Sure.
Like there are three classes of hers that I sit in on.
Yep.
So, and I know I shouldn't say I know, but I'm assuming that they're all three different classes in her ion. So would they show up as like class A, class B, class, you know what I'm saying?
It's however you name them. So if this is
Okay.
period 1, period 2,
Gotcha.
and that's the simplest thing to do. Once she has all of the students in the group that she wants to share with you, then what she would do is click on download. And then it actually downloaded a CSV file. I'm going to go ahead and open up this file. And it opens up in Excel.
Okay.
And what this is going to give you then, Miss Ellen, is it's going to give you the first name, the last name. It's going to give you the student ID number, and then also the student's name. And these are helpful key pieces of information for when you go, because I'm going to log out as Carrie Bell and I'm going to log in as Linda Besmer. And I'm going to use this roster that I've downloaded to select the students that need to be in my group.
Oh,
Okay.
Would you mind, Linda, would you mind just showing her what your Excel spreadsheet looks like?
Oh, I'm so sorry.
well,
Yes,
that would be good to know.
I'm
Right.
sorry. I didn't
Thank you.
realize that you couldn't see that. So, so here's the Excel spreadsheet. I'm so sorry, Miss Ellen.
That's
Thank
okay.
you.
I get it.
Thank you, Carl. Let me, there we go.
Okay.
So let me just size this a little bit.
Oh, nice.
That looks good, Linda. We can see it.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's fine.
So it's going to give you all of that pertinent information.
Mhm.
So I'm going to have this kind of off to the side. I'm going to go back and share my screen again and go back to my Myon account.
Mhm.
I'm going to log out as Carrie Bell. And now I'm going to log in as Linda Besmer. And I have a whole bunch of students, but I'm going to need to put together the list of students that, that I want to share with Carrie. Or in this case, what we'll do is we'll click on classroom. Sorry, we'll click on students. And what I want to do is I want to go ahead and add a group. And I'm going to call it Shared Roster with eFrench. Okay. So, and here's where I could say, you know, period 2.
Right.
And again, this could be period 2 shared roster. And then I'm going to go ahead and click on that group code just so that I have that for any students. And so now when we go down and we look at our group, period 2 shared roster, here's that group code. And if you did want students to join your group, you would give them that code and they could enter that, but let me show you how you can go in and assign students to that group. So I'm going to go through somewhat the same process. I'm going to go ahead and click on assign. So this would be what you would do. But because you don't already have a roster made up like we did with Miss Bell, you know, we already had that roster made up. Instead, what I'm going to do is go to the building, or you might go to the grade. When I go to the building, I'm going to pull up every single student that's in the building, or again, I can select just a specific grade. And then I'm only going to pull up students that are that, you know, in that grade. I'm going to go to my school though. That's because I kind of have students all over. And my first student is Ben Franklin. So I see that student right here. But if your school has hundreds of students, it might be too difficult to kind of flip through. So we can also search. And you can see we can search by name, by ID number, or by username. So that spreadsheet that I downloaded from Carrie Bell's roster had first name, last name, ID, and then also the username. So my first student is Ben Franklin and his username is Key. So I can just type in Key, and here I see Ben Franklin. So I'm just going to click on the plus sign, and I've moved him over to my group. My next student is James Adams, and his username is James Adams, and that's also his ID number. I wasn't very inventive when I did that. And you see, I didn't even have to finish it, but it's, and here's James Adams has popped up. So I just click on the plus sign to move him over. My next one is James Reese, and his username is James X, but his ID number, just to show you how you can do this with student ID number, is M377095999. And you can see if you put in the student ID number, those are unique, just like the username is unique. So he's the only student that pops up with that ID number. And my next student, I was so inventive, is Kitty Feline. And we'll just put in Kitty's username is Kitty. And my last student is Reese Franklin. And we'll just put in his name. And that didn't show up. I wonder if we have to, with name, so with name, I tried first name space last name, and that didn't work. But if I put in the last name, but if you have a very common last name amongst your students, again, you might want to use the user ID, the student ID number, or something else that would be more unique. And so I apply. So now in my period 2 shared roster, I have 5 students. And you can see here are my 5 students. And if I pull up my spreadsheet. I can't do both at the same time, unfortunately, with Zoom. But when I pull up my spreadsheet, you can see I have Ben Franklin, James Adams, James Reese, Kitty Feline, and Reese Franklin. So the first step would be to have your colleague take the students that you're going to share for a specific period or class, and put those students in a group, and she literally can copy that class roster over to the group. That was the first thing that I showed you.
Right.
And then she can download that roster or download the members of that group and share that Excel spreadsheet with you. It's actually a CSV file, and that will give you all of the information that you need so that when you set up a group, you can very easily go in and find those students and assign them to that specific group.
Gotcha. Okay.
So it's really very straightforward. I did double check with several of the consultants that actually, Carl and I don't do professional development, but we've used the program so long, we're pretty familiar with how to use it. But I did check with those in the know, and they said there really is no other way other than the ways that I've just explained. So with the student code, let me, and I'm going on the fly here, but let me go back to my Myon, and I'm going to go ahead and log out, and let me log in. Carl, do you have a student login that you remember that I can use?
Sure. Just try PK student. And then the same for the password. Hopefully that'll work.
Oh, you know, I forgot to write down the code. I have to go back. I'm so sorry. Hang on. So I'm back in, and so what I want to look at with this roster, oh, I'm sorry, I need to go to classroom. And then here's my students. And now when I go to this group, here's my group code. So I'm just going to jot my group code down.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
I don't forget that. So it's, and I can always look it up. So it's 5SF1 G6 4G. Okay, so that's what I would need to write on the board for my students. So let me go ahead.
This is over.
Go back and
10 minutes. 15.
Okay, I can wait.
Okay.
Okay, and so this is my, I'm logged in as a student now, and you can see the student can search on Myon. So the dashboard should look familiar, the last book the student opened. But you can see down underneath the last book the student opened, it says join group. So this is where your student, again, if you've got a student who is independent, you can have them go ahead and let's see, G64G. You can have them type in that code. And if your students use Google Classroom, this would be something they're very familiar with. And all they need to do is click join. And now you've joined period 2 shared roster with eFrench.
Okay. Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. They are familiar with that.
Yep. So again, that's another way, but you would still, it would be helpful to have the group roster from your colleague, just so that you can double check and make sure that all the students that are supposed to be in that group have indeed signed up to be in that group. But this is another way, as a total aside, but one of the things that you can, but this is, I think is just kind of a really neat feature, and I hadn't thought about using the group code this way until someone brought it up on a webinar last week. And what they were suggesting is they actually had set up book clubs for different categories. So here's one for sports, here's one for crafts, here's one for biography. So they had 4 or 5 different book clubs set up. And what they did is they set up a group for each book club and then had that code turned on so that students could enter a code. And then they put the list up on the board and students could sign up for the book club that they wanted to join based
Like
on the
that.
category of what types of books they were going to be reading. And that way they self-selected right into that group. And then the teacher was able to go in and put together some book bundles or put together a
Yeah.
project that had the books that the students in that book club were going to be reading and discussing.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
That is a good
I just
idea.
thought that join the group with the group code was kind of a really neat way to kind of facilitate book clubs or those kinds of activities, especially I know your students have devices,
Yeah.
and if you want to keep your students engaged in reading over the summer, again, that might be kind of a neat way to do it. And the discussions might be virtual discussions, but again, to kind of keep students engaged and
Right.
keep that reading muscle flexing and practicing over the summer. That was kind
Right.
of a way to do it.
Yeah, that's awesome. That is. And you can just keep adding books to it, to that list too. That's really a cool idea. I'm glad you brought that up. Thanks. I'm gonna
Yeah,
definitely
yeah,
bring
it's
that
just
up to
yes.
our
So
groups too.
yeah, the group feature really is pretty powerful. And again, just the same way that you went in and added students, you have the ability to actually unassign students. So let me show you that real quickly. It will just take a second, and then
Okay.
unless there's anything else that you need covered. So I'm going to go ahead and log out as my student, and I'm going to go ahead and log back in as Linda B. teacher. And classroom, and then students. So I can either delete all the students that are in the group, or when I go to look at this particular group, all I did was click on the eye and it pulls up the students that are in this group. And say Kitty Feline really doesn't need to be in this group anymore. I just select the box in front of her name, select an action, and then I can go ahead and remove her. And so she will now be taken out of that. So maybe she doesn't need that intervention anymore. And you can see here's my pre-K student that signed up using the group code. That student's right at the bottom of my list. But
That's very simple. Yeah, that's great.
It is. And you can see also if I were back at my student roster, if I go back to and click on my roster, maybe Darius Burks is someone that I want to assign to that group. So I can click on Darius Burks. I can assign to group. And then I select a group. And I want to put him in my period 2 shared group with eFrench. And do I really want to do that? Yes, I do.
Okay, yeah.
And now Darius Burks is in my group as well. So once you have the body of students, it's very easy to move them in and out of the group. They may stay in your roster and move in and out of groups depending on what type of intervention that they need. And the same for your colleague. Again, she may have her main roster, but she may be moving students in and out of different groups. And it's very easy to do that.
Awesome. Okay. Yeah, that's good to know too. I'm sure she'll appreciate that.
Oh, sure.
Thank you. Yeah, this is great. Thanks so much. I appreciate it. Could you send me this link so that I can forward it to her and
yes,
and use it as a reference?
So
I took notes, but I do want to play with it some more.
Sure. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.